In your column in the August issue of Graphics Pro, you kind of ask shops, do you need a large format laser? So, to complement and build off of that, I wanted to chat a little bit about the technology and some things that shops should consider. So, first off, what technically qualifies as a large format laser, in terms of size or wattage? So, what are we
Okay.
talking about here?
Well, they use the word format, which basically refers to size. And you would have a typical laser for, a small shop might be in the area of 18 by 12 or 12 or 24 by 12. The larger format is when you get over that 24 by 12. And they can be pretty big. They can go, 24 by 24, 36 by 36, and even up to 48 by 36. So those are big pieces of equipment. But with the bigger equipment comes some other capabilities that you just might not have with a smaller machine. For instance, usually the bigger they go, the deeper the bed goes down. So the taller something you can engrave. I engraved a lot of uh, boxes that were used for cremation purposes and for burying, for some for burying and some for, go on the shelf. And, they were, I could do up to 8 inches. If you were to get into something bigger than that, taller than that, you'd have to get a bigger format laser, whether you use the bedside or not, bed size or not. So also with the bigger lasers, you can get more power. So you can easily get into the 60, 80, even up to 120 watt range. Also, with the bigger laser, you can get dual laser sources. So besides the typical CO2 laser, you can get a dual laser that adds fiber. So the fiber would allow you to process more metals and steel and things along that lines. So strictly speaking, it's format, but there's a whole lot of other things that can come with those upgrades. A typical shop would order if they're processing a lot of acrylic plastics, they usually order sheets that are 12 by 24. Um, they're cut down from larger sheets, but that would be one of the sizes that you can get. If you don't get that size, then you're into a larger sheet that is usually 24 by 48. And if you wanted to process that whole sheet without cutting it, you would need a laser that could accommodate that. If not, if you want to cut your own sheets, the saw that you use is a fairly expensive saw. I mean, like a couple $1,000s. So you're either buying the 12 by 24 or the full sheet. And that goes the same for the thin woods that you would process with a laser as well. So um, if you're planning on processing any of that, you need to figure out what size pieces of wood or what size pieces of acrylic you're gonna use.
And so, for businesses interested in this larger equipment, how can they determine if investing in a large format laser is the right decision?
Okay, well, first, some of the reasons why you would get it if your clientele includes, say, a lot of big organizations where you're doing a lot of multiples. So let's say you're doing, 150, 200 name badges at a time. You might want a bigger laser with a bigger sheet of acrylic to be able to do them all at one time, or at least a lot of them at one time. So you certainly can get into multiples. And with the newer systems, you can get cameras that can help you place your artwork perfectly. Wonderful, wonderful systems that you would want to look at if you're getting a bigger laser to do a lot of multiples or do a lot of complicated graphics on your product. The other thing is, sports leagues. If you're doing whole entire sports leagues, 5, 6, 7, 800 trophies at a time, you're going to want to do a lot of volume of cutting out those little pieces that go on your trophies. So, and then tool marking is definitely, it's a particular business that somebody might focus on, and you're going to do tool marking. You want to be able to do the big tools as well as the small tools, or be able to mark multiples at a time to be able to make money at it.
And so one more question for you. You kind of mentioned the dual laser machines. So what would be the advantage, and how would a shop decide if that's something they want to go with, or do they get two separate machines? Kind of, how do they decide on that?
Okay. Well, it's you would decide the same way as if you were getting to decide whether you want a bigger machine, which is I always looked at if more than 10 to 15% of my business would utilize that new feature, whether it be size or the dual laser, then it's worth investing into. If you have the occasional person comes in a couple times a year for that specific use, it really, it's not something you should do. Particularly if you get into the dual laser, you're talking about really two different technologies. There's a learning curve too, and processing metals is very different than processing, uh, plastics and woods and that type of thing. And certainly with the fiber optic uh, laser, you can engrave wood, or I mean, you can engrave metal, but you can't cut metal. Um, if you're doing a lot of cutting of wood or plastics, investing in more power may be the answer. It's never simple to make those decisions because there's always other things to consider.
I appreciate you offering insights, and obviously, readers can check out your August article for a little bit more of a deep dive into the topic.